Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning back into the Pursuit of Everything with Levi Warner. I've got Cozi here, Angie, and my good friend Cory Golden is joining us today. Once again, you can find me at Levi Warner on Instagram, or same on Facebook. Today, we are going to talk about leadership a little bit. Cory is in the manager role at one of the big refineries here in Montana. Um, Cozi and I were talking about the one thing that we kind of both struggle with, and leadership is one of them. So, Cory and I are going to be doing some stogies with the homies. Thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thank you for having me.
Cozi, you want to kind of kick us off?
Yeah. Cory, I guess my kind of first question for you is how did you get started at the refinery and move into a leadership spot, and kind of what's your spot right now?
I've worked for the refinery for 19 years now, and I started kind of as a temporary employee, and so I've seen a little bit of everything throughout the refinery. So then when I got hired on to be a full-time employee, worked as a wage operator in the field for probably 5 or 7 years, and then went into the control center, and then just kind of slowly the positions kind of slowly ramped up from there. Kind of got into it just leading a few people from the console. You kind of got to make the decisions. You got to kind of help them along with at the same time they're helping you while being outside. So as the roles kind of increase and the responsibility went up, you really got to figure out how you're going to be your leadership type. You can't just go out and just dictate people. You actually have to work with the people and actually learn how to do it. And I was fortunate enough to actually receive some training throughout the company to kind of help get you to kind of find that role.
So that's kind of the nice part of working for a corporation, right? As I'm sure they train their leaders. We're just kind of stuck out here trying to figure it out on our own. So that's why we thought Cory would be a great guest to have on, so he can teach us.
Yeah.
I'll try to help out if I can.
Yeah.
But you are absolutely right. Being like a small business owner and stuff like that, when you work for the great big corporations, they push the leadership thing to all of their people. They send them to conferences and it's
Right.
like a huge thing. But when you're a small business owner, it's hard to do that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, they kind of at least set you up with a roadmap and
Yeah.
kind of get you to at least think about it in a different way versus just I'm just got to go do this now.
Exactly.
So that really did help out.
Yeah.
Right.
So the different personality types I feel like in leadership are always interesting. So I'm assuming you're mostly leading men?
Obviously in that field, it is pretty much majority of men. We do have a few women, but it's definitely lopsided towards the men in that role. But honestly, men and women, you just got to know their kind of their style, their personality, and it kind of all relates.
I will say in my leadership experience, the men are the most sensitive.
I would disagree with that.
You would?
Being in an office full of women,
He's got a crier.
you got to cry.
When you cry so much, it loses its potency.
I think he's used to it now.
Right.
He's like, oh, this is going to make Angie cry. Okay, go on.
Right. Well, in our field, I deal with a lot of people in construction and a lot of people, but then, we've got lenders and title companies. So we've got a good mix of male and female. But it's an interesting dynamic that everyone's, driven by different wants and needs and insecurities that they, as a leader, you kind of touched on it. You kind of have to figure out what everybody's little quirks and ticks are.
Yeah, and that's kind of the hard part is when you first kind of, let's just say, meet somebody, you really don't know, so you kind of revert to hey, I need this, and it may not take the proper effect because they may need a little bit more. They need a little bit more of the plan. They need to actually get led a little bit more instead of just saying, hey, go out and do this. And then after you get to know them a little bit, then you can kind of cater to like their needs and be like on how to deliver the message. And that kind of helps out and makes everything a lot easier.
How many people do you have under you right now?
So I've got 9 or 12 direct reports, and then below them, there's 27 operators that I deal with on a daily basis, which I try to get the people that are my direct reports to kind of work with them, but it kind of all ties together. Kind of depends on where I'm at or my availability. Like sometimes they come directly to me, and other times they'll work through their actual leadership.
So would you say there's like 5 different types of people, or is it like everybody's completely different in how
Well,
you lead them?
I think there's basically 4 main types of people. They kind of get divided up into like 4 groups, and then there's a whole bunch of subgroups within that. They all kind of, after you get to know them a little bit, that you can really kind of pick and choose where they're at pretty easily.
Mhm.
So,
Do you guys do the personality tests and stuff on your employees when they start?
no, like in the trainings that I've been to, they actually will have you do a personality test before you go, so you can kind of figure out where you're at, and then you can kind of recognize kind of where they're at a little bit. So that does help. But it's just like even like in your guys' role, it's just like the ability to read people, right? Like the emotional intelligence, you kind of got to get into it and kind of know how they are and be aware of your situation, be aware of the whole situation and stuff like that. And it really helps out when you kind of can be able to read people. You don't necessarily need to know their personality type. Just like work with them on how you do. And if it didn't work one time, well, maybe I'll take a different approach with them next time.
Right. Circle it a different way.
Then you figure it out, and it works out pretty well.
We were kind of chatting about this weekend with Cory, and one of Cozi's leadership flaws is Cozi's just a soldier, right? She just wants to get the project done, she's a taskmaster, right? So her leading into then having people to lead and train is hard because she just wants to get the task checked off her list in her nice little checkbox.
I actually kind of had the same experiences when like it was almost easier to kind of just go out and do it myself,
Right.
instead of like actually working through the chain and actually kind of letting them know what I'm looking for and stuff like that. And a lot of times is if you just tell them the why, that goes a long ways. Then they can start looking at it like, oh, okay, now I know why it's important to why I'm being asked to do this or do it a certain way type deal. So that really helps out a lot. Not just ask them to do something, kind of explain this is why I need this, and this is why it's helpful, and this is why it makes it more efficient and stuff like that.
And that's really helped me in the last year because we're dealing with a bunch of subcontractors in the home building company, and they only think of their specific role in the house. Where if I tell them like, hey, we need to do this way, and then if, like you said, like go into the why it's important that we do this. So the trim guy, sands everything, gets everything perfect. So when the painters come, their job isn't twice as hard.
Yeah.
Right. And so then because they're only thinking of their trade,
Yep.
they're not then. But then once you explain it to them, they don't want to not be helpful, right? They want to help you to make the project go great. So explaining that why really is a huge benefit.
And I can imagine like in your role, like once you kind of get that explanation out there to a couple of them, then they kind of start working together within their own little matrices and maybe communication and saying, hey, next time, hey, I'd like you to maybe just move this.
Which they absolutely do, right?
They do.
The plumber, the electrician, they all work together.
And they all talk to each other. And like the excavator talks to the foundation crew. Like it's actually, we've got a pretty good team, and that's been really beneficial for us.
Yeah.
But in leading other directions for me, with the realtors and the lenders and that kind of stuff is, I've always been like a lead by example. Like I'm going to work hard. I'm going to get my stuff done. But then explaining the ins and outs to people is definitely been a game changer.
Yeah. I mean, you have to lead by example, because if you're going to ask people to go out and do something a certain way, like if they see you not doing it that way, like you're the one that's cutting corners, they're going to be like, oh, well, Levi does it that way. Like, so I can kind of go this way and
Right.
do that. And that's where it kind of breaks down. So leading by example is a big thing, right? And you shouldn't ask somebody to do something that you yourself wouldn't be willing to do, or you don't follow that path as well.
And I go as far as like, it's very deliberate, right? Like, I want a clean job site. I want the subs to clean up after themselves. But like, every time I go to a job site, I'm picking up trash on the job site, right? And A, I want a clean job site, so I do it. But then B, I want them to see me doing it. And if they see me doing it, then they're like, okay, I need to tell all my employees to do it as well.
Right. And I do the same thing. Like, so I want my units to be clean, housekeeping, just leads to safety, right? If you got a cleaner work area, there's going to be less slip, strips, and falls, and it looks a lot better. So therefore, when I'm out in the units as well, I do the same thing. I'll just pick up a handful of garbage and throw it away.
Right.
You're in their unit already, so you just like, what's it take to bend over and pick up a piece of trash?
Oh, absolutely.
So then they see that, and just lead by example.
Did you want to be in a leadership spot, or you just kind of fell into it? Was it something you were like striving for?
Kind of initially, no. And then I kind of not say tossed into it, but I wasn't quite ready for it at the time. And so therefore it was kind of hard in the beginning, which that's where I reverted back. Like, well, I can just go do this real quick. And,
Right.
Therefore I didn't ask for a lot of help. And that's sometimes the hardest thing when you're trying to figure out how to be a leader, is like actually asking for the help, because you're like,
or like taking the time to train is what I struggle with. It's faster if I just go do it, but I need to make sure.
But that'll just hold you back further, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the long term.
In the
right?
long term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because as we try to grow, then we need better people and have them trained. And that's where we're struggling the most, right? Is because it is like a fast paced environment where the more we get done, the more we sell, and the more, everybody's doing better.
Yeah.
So, and then the refinery that you work for sent you to a bunch of trainings. Like, I know you went to some Jocko trainings and for leadership and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to go to one of the extreme ownership trainings and listen to them as their military backgrounds and like how they decided on what to do and direct the people. And it was like their stories are very good stories when they start getting up there and telling everything, like how they did it, how they came up with this answer and stuff. And one of Jocko's things is like, if something goes bad, he's like, good. It's one of his biggest sayings is good, because he's like, what can we learn from it? How can we be better from that? So there's always learning opportunities, and there's always the ability to make yourself better out of a mistake, as long as you learn from that mistake.
Right. And the other thing that I always preach about the trainings, right? I'm in the Arte Syndicate. I'm in the DM fam. But the one thing that I've learned from Andy Frisella recently is, because in our construction business, like there's always unique problems that, no house is the same. It's not, we're dealing with imperfect material and imperfect, people making, building these houses. And when a unique problem comes up, then, people call me and ask me, hey, what should we do? To where I used to just give them the answer. Now it's, okay, what would you do? What do you think we should do?
Yeah.
Right. And that's helped that out a lot too, because then they're using their problem solving brains.
And it empowers.
Yeah. And it empowers.
You empower them to make that decision. And it's easier. I'm like, well, you can just do this. Well, you can do that, but the questions build them to be more confident in the ability to make that decision without running it up the chain.
Right. And I think it's always evolving. I think your leadership is always evolving and always changing directions, and especially because you're dealing with so many different personalities.
Well, and if you don't, you're not going to survive. Right.
Because some people are driven by money, right? Like I get those people, but then some people are driven by security, and and we're dealing with a lot of egos with dudes that have been in construction for a long time, right?
Doing this for 30 years.
Right. Yeah. I don't care.
Yeah, it's funny. Like the refinery, though, I would almost picture in my head, which I don't think it is, kind of like when Steve was working on the oil rigs, right? Yeah. And he would throw tools at people. Right? That's how I want to lead.
Right.
And that
it comes more naturally to me.
That is a style, and that's like probably more of an old school style.
Right.
I think a lot of leadership has tone that down from
Yeah.
where it's at now. Now you kind of cater to.
Yeah, I think that's an oil rig thing. I don't think you can do that in a real job.
Right. No. The other point is everybody, everyone's got their own insecurities and their own ambitions, and some people aren't as driven as other people, right? So as a leader, when you find out what those things are, then you can cater your style to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the people that aren't the big go-getters, like you start them out small and just be like, hey, can you help me out with this? And then they're like, you got to give them the praise, like, hey, I appreciate you doing that, because we really needed that done. And it's like the next time they'll maybe be a little bit more apt to just do it on their own.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to kind of build them up.
Yeah. But in the world needs, soldiers as well. Like we need people to do those things. You just have to put the right people in the right spots.
Right.
And that sometimes can be tricky too, because a lot of people talk a good game. Like they want to do this, they want to do that, but all they're doing is talking. Their actions don't follow their mouth.
Yeah, and if you start them out, when they're a little newer and they're maybe not that go-getter yet, and then they possibly can get thrown into a leadership role.
Right.
And
kind of like you were saying that wasn't like a position you thought you'd want.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you kind of have to groom them into potentially one day taking on that role.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're just kind of that way to them and just boss them around, well, then obviously that's all they know. So then therefore, potentially they're just going to be from what they learned.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So we need to get Cozi into more grooming, creepy style.
Diddy style.
Right. The other thing we were chatting about when we were having this conversation is Cory had a good point, like with someone who's come from like a corporate brat background and their ego's kind of tied up in always being right? Like Cozi and I come from, the not a positive reinforcement background, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's just wasn't the parenting style that we had, or that I grew up playing sports and like it was never a lot of positive reinforcements. It was like you should do this better and this better and this better.
Levi still does not positively reinforce me.
No, well, it doesn't work for Cozi.
Would it work for you?
No, it doesn't work for Cozi, right? But if I'm like, oh, great job, Cozi, right? I get no reaction.
I don't know how to respond.
Sometimes taking compliments is the hardest thing to do, right? Yeah. And other people like really kind of need that reinforcement. So it's just like it goes back to the personality.
Makes me feel awkward.
Right.
I'm like,
but I'm like, hey, Cozi, this house on the street sold and ours didn't, right? Like if I'm, I say it much harsher.
There's some more cuss words in there.
There's a few cuss words in there. That motivates her. And that's kind of how I am too, right? Because we're competitive and we want to win. But not a lot of people are like that, right?
Yeah.
And you had a good point where like, hey, to the person that's, their ego's wrapped up in being right, you had a great point that said, if you point out what they're doing right and then being like, okay, now let's work on this.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause like you always kind of want to lead with something good for those people. Like you're doing a great job, but I would like to see this change a little bit.
Sandwich it.
Yep.
Yeah. You really do. You can't just be like, hey, we need to work on this. Cause that's all they hear. And then they become defensive. Mm-hmm. But if they hear they're doing something right and then we want to work on something, then it's like, okay, all right. So I got the first half of this. I'm not nailing that. And then let's work on, the back half.
Right. We're teaching Angie all the tricks. So Ed Milet says, like, you sandwich it, you give them a compliment, say what you're doing right, and then tell them what they can work on, and then you end it with a compliment.
Yep.
So they feel good about it, going in and going out.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to get like personal with them. You don't have to like know all the ins and outs, but like, just like ask them about their weekend and just stuff like that and have a conversation with them and don't have to just go straight into like, hey, let's do this.
Well, I think that's a total weird thing that I struggle with is I almost get too friendly, which is funny, right? Because inside I want to be like, do this, this, and this, like move on because I'm busy. But then I get too friendly.
So that if you get too friendly, like you definitely should be friends with your people. Mm-hmm. But if you get too friendly, then you almost get scared to ask them the difficult questions and stuff like that. So you kind of got to have that happy balance where, take an interest in their life and also be able to still direct them at the same time. Right. So, and that is the tough part, right?
Yeah. Angie, are you recognizing Levi Sandwich? Has he done it to you before?
I'm sure he has.
I can't tell you how many
Yeah.
times it's happened in my life where I'll be like, that motherfucker.
I was gonna say, I'm sure he has, but he does it so well that I don't know that's what he's doing.
Oh, I
Right.
catch it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that is a strong suit of mine, is reading people. I've always been good at that. And then also like finessing what I want to get done out of that person. Where I struggle with is like, I'm not a micromanager. I'm more of a like, let's figure it out. Like if you come up with a solution and, you know, if it gets real bad, I'm there to help. Where sometimes I need to be more hands-on. But I think it's hiring the right people as well.
Yeah, I can definitely see, like, there's some times where I really kind of let it go and run its own path, but then there's other times where I catch myself, you know, being that micromanager. I'm like, dude, you shouldn't be here right now. And so you kind of got to take that step back. And
So in your spot, can you fire? Or does it have to like run through?
no,
different people?
I think I would provide the guidance on maybe we need to look at going in that direction, but I myself cannot.
Because that's something we struggle with, is holding on too long.
Right.
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah.
Because I do get attached to people, and I want to see them do good and take
Right.
care of their families. And
Yeah.
you know, like it's not as, you know, as luxurious as, you know, you're fired, like get the fuck out of here sort of thing. Where it's the people have lives and payments and stuff like that. So I do stretch it out longer than I should. But I think that's not a character flaw. That's just, you know, being a caring person.
Yeah, and I mean, you want to give people that chance to succeed and get better, you know. But you know, if the pattern persists, then you just finally got to do it. So
That is the best part about having a bunch of subcontractors, is because like you just don't have to hire them again. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we won't use you again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it happens all the time. Well, I think this is a great leadership conversation. I do want to circle back because we've had Jeff with Comfort Heating on, and we've talked about other career paths than going to college, and you know, how our parents probably were like, always, you know, you need to go to college and get a degree so you're not a loser. Where that's just not the case anymore. The blue collar now is like the next gold rush. And we've talked at length because we're buddies, and like you went to, you know, a year of college and then
Semester and a half.
semester and a half.
It was two.
You made it all the way through. Okay.
The whole year. I made it the whole year.
All right.
But yeah, because when I graduated, I kind of felt like that was the next step. So I kind of blindly did it and kind of had that plan all along. And then once I got there, it was kind of realized that, no, this is not for me. And I think if college isn't pushed so much, we would get more people that would be like, hey, no, I'm ready to go join the workforce and, you know, potentially build something, right?
Right.
Like Levi, he's building something cool right now. So like if we had more people like that, I think we'd have a lot more opportunities for a lot of younger people.
Right. So at what point, when like your year, and then you probably came home for the summer, you're like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. Because then you worked at the mine for a hot minute. And what was that kind of decision? Like, hey, I don't want to learn from a guy driving a Subaru. Like,
Fucking Subaru.
Subaru.
Yeah. I think it was kind of about halfway through that semester. So I guess the semester and a half kind of because after that I came back and then I got a job with one of my friends, and then you know, people are starting to talk about like working at the mine. I'm like, hey, I'd go do that, make some more money. And then I went to that job, and then they're like, we'll talk about they're all talking about trying to get this job, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna go get that job. And then I was down at that job, and they're like, hey, well, we're all working towards, you know, like the oil refineries. And I'm like, oh, well, that sounds like a job I could do. So you just kind of followed the money in a way, and you know, ended up working for one of the biggest corporations in the world for a while, and then kind of got a training path and kind of ended up where I'm at.
Did a lot of people, because being where you're from, right? Cory's from Columbus, so the mine's right there. Did a lot of people directly out of high school go work at the mine?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, probably very shortly after, right?
Yeah,
because
I would assume most people's parents worked at the mine, or
yeah, and so that was kind of the path. And then like when you're young, you want to all have the new truck, the new cars, the new this. So that was a great way to go get it, right? Because it was very close and the money was really good. So a lot of people in that county, really did just kind of migrate to
It's
that.
a great job.
It is a great job.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And it's a good pathway, right? Like
Yeah.
you learn some skills and then moved up and
So
kept on.
were your parents pushing you to go to college, or were your parents like, hey, go work at the mine?
Honestly, I don't remember them ever pushing it. It was just kind of like in high school, it was kind of like, well, okay, that's what I'm going to go do next, right? And I don't think my parents really pushed me to kind of do anything. They allowed me to create my own path, which is why I was able to only go for a semester and a half,
Right.
and kind of live my own life. And it was kind of nice. So there wasn't that pressure from above to, okay, you got to go do this and this and this. So.
And I'm not bashing on college, right? Like if you're going to be an accountant or a nurse or a doctor or an attorney or something, like college is great, but
It's
like
just not for everyone,
right? It's just not for everyone. It was obviously not for me, and it's a great career, great choice if you're going to do something, but you can get stuck in saddled with a bunch of debt.
Yeah.
And
well, and what's interesting to me about it is it seems now I'm like, you're young to be like, hey, I know exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life.
I
Like,
still don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
right. Right. So they expect these kids at 18. And there's a few people, right? Like Jocelyn obviously knew what she wanted to do right out of high school, but like I don't feel like the majority of people are like that. Because then if you go, then you're like taking communications.
Right.
Yeah, basket weaving.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you end up with like a sociology degree.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or
It's psychology.
or you're going to learn, you're going to get a business degree and the guy teaching you is driving a fucking Subaru. Like I'm just not listening to that guy. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
no.
How do you know? Like
I want
I
to
hate
business from the guy that has 6 sports cars in the driveway.
Right. An airplane.
Yeah, airplanes.
Right. Right. I hate those who can't teach concept because I don't want to learn from those people. I don't want who wants to learn from the loser to be successful in life. That to me that doesn't.
Well, and like a professor, they are a good student. Some people are just good students.
Yeah,
I am not one of them.
The School of Hard Knocks does pretty well because it teaches you to be better because it doesn't just hand it to you. Yeah.
Well, cool guys. I think this is great. I think we can wrap it up. You got anything else?
I thought you would have good leadership questions.
Well, I do have lots of leadership questions. So have you ever listened to Simon Sinek?
I read one of his books, but I've never listened to him.
Okay. Because when you said you were talking about finding people, like telling people why you do this and why. So he does a really good, I think it was a TED Talk, on finding your why. And a job I used to work at, we used to have all of our new employees listen to that and then write an article or like a little story on what their why is and give it to leadership. That way, when they started, you knew like how they worked, right?
Yeah.
And so it worked really well. We had this gal that I was hiring and nobody else wanted to hire. I wanted to hire her. I loved her like attitude and I just loved her. And we had her do that. Nobody saw her results but me. I was the only one that got her why. So I knew how to communicate with her. I knew how to work with her. The person above me didn't get that. And he was still trying to find like how to communicate with her. And he wanted to fire her and do all these things after a few months. And I went to him and showed her the why, told him what I had been doing. He started that, and 6 months later, he was like, she's my best employee.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times now, in the last couple of years, we've actually allowed the operators, which is kind of our entry position, to start doing the interviews. And because they're the people that they're going to work with. So they're like, they can get the vibe off them versus like, say your boss at the time might have a different feeling for that person. But like if the people that are actually going to work with them, they like them, think they'll do good, like their attitude, like the way they handle themselves, like they're going to fit in a lot better because they've already been vetted by a lot of the people that they're going to actually work with.
Yeah.
And so therefore it's a little bit easier. And like, we've been doing that for probably 2 years now. And the results have been pretty good.
Yeah.
We've gotten a lot of good employees that were chosen by the people they're going to work with.
And that's genius, right? Like meet the people that you're actually going to be day to day with.
Yes.
You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's simple.
Because some people just don't vibe.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And
You
the
know what's
workplace can get
interesting
better.
to me about the leadership thing is when I was like an employee, not in a leadership spot, I didn't realize that as a leader, that's their job, is to figure out how to handle all these different
Yeah.
personalities. When I was in the employee spot, I was trying to please the leader.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
But didn't think like they were trying to please me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a different way to think about it.
Right.
Right. Because I feel like forever that's how people always thought about it.
Mhm.
Forever. But just recently, like you said, things are changing. You're not dictators anymore. You're trying to figure out how to communicate with these people
Mhm.
to build them up. And it is a whole, there's so much.
I
to
think
learn.
though most people don't realize that whoever's leading them is trying to build them up. I think, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think most people look at it from like a negative
because it's
viewpoint.
Because it's an authority.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And anytime things come from authority, usually it's negative.
Mhm.
Like how we've been taught.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
and yeah, we are trying to get a little bit more into like the social intelligence aspect of the workplace, and it's a lot easier to recognize how you lead them versus them just trying to please you.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that doesn't make them happy employees.
Right.
Like if they just feel like they're just getting told this and this and this, but if you can take their thoughts and feelings into account and how you point them in the right direction, that usually gets way better results these days. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, and when people feel comfortable going to their boss or whoever, I mean, it has to be like you can't be scared of it.
No.
Because if you're scared to go to whoever is your boss, you're not going to last.
No.
And you're not going to be happy at work because you don't feel like you have that open forum to go just say what you need. Even if you just need to go in and be like, I don't need you to fix anything for me. I just want to sit here and bitch at you for 5 minutes about my day.
Yeah.
I've had people do that to me before. And I'm like, okay.
Well, one of the biggest things.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the biggest things about kind of being a leader is that you never complain down.
Mhm.
Like if you are having a rough day or something, like you need to go complain up, because therefore you're not setting the bad example or setting the bad tone to your employees and your
That's good advice.
things. So like I have a boss that I can actually just go and sit with and just vent, and then I'm like, all right, thank you. I feel great now. Appreciate it. I'm going to go have a better day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
you
so,
don't need him to do anything.
Nope.
You just need him to sit there and listen.
yep.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
we usually do that over a couple beers. We talk work, we complain, we talk about it, and maybe the next path forward type thing. And then it's like, okay.
Yeah.
And then we just shut work off and just enjoy our drink. And it's like, okay, yeah, we both kind of needed that little vent session. So
Absolutely. Cozi
Yeah.
gets my rage.
hey, that means he's venting up.
Right?
Congratulations.
Yeah.
What's funny is he'll just start going off to where I'll end up like kind of laughing.
But that's what he needs, right? I just need to tell somebody this really quick,
Right.
and then we're going to go have lunch and have a great day.
Because I don't want to blow up on the people that I'm frustrated with. I just need to vent, and then I kind of work through the problem in my head as the anger comes down.
Yeah. But then you can actually go explain yourself to the people that you are upset with. Like, all right, hey, we need to look at something here. Like, we got to go in a little different direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your employees actually, being an employee, actually like that, right? Like that you're like, hey, this wasn't right, and we should probably change the way we do it.
As long as it's sandwiched.
Yeah, as long
Right.
as it's
You gotta use the sandwich. You gotta use the sandwich.
Because we don't want to keep doing things that we're not doing right over and
Right.
over and over again.
Right.
It's just,
And if you don't know you're doing it wrong, you'll never get it right.
Right.
So you kind of got to be able to take that criticism with the good. Yep.
exactly.
Well, cool, Cory. We've got a couple questions that we ask our guests every time. This might be a little different. You're in a corporate setting. Normally, we're just interviewing entrepreneurs, but you're kind of what they call an entrepreneur, which is fantastic as well. What is the best and the worst advice that you've ever gotten? Yeah, I'm sure the best is for me.
I don't know. It would have been nice to get a heads up on that
We
question.
normally do, yeah.
Yeah.
So those are tough ones. The easy one is the last one is: do you like to win more or do you hate to lose more?
Oh, I hate to lose more. Like the wins are great, but like the losses just they suck so bad.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah. And I think I'm the same way. I just hate losing at everything. Right. It's just kind of how I'm wired. And I think Cozi likes to win. And we're still feeling out what Angie likes to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I feel if you hate to lose, the wins are just going to come, and then they'll just get bigger and bigger, because it drives you not to lose again.
I have been finding that I'm getting a lot more competitive with like other lenders around.
Right.
Like, to the point where sometimes I want to like just slap them in the face.
Mhm.
Just for fun.
Yeah.
Just to make me feel better.
Yeah.
Right.
And they haven't even done anything.
Right.
But I just,
And being competitive is being competitive is a good thing. Like I know it gets a bad rap, and I don't have an option. It's just how I'm wired.
Yeah.
And but I think this has been a great talk about leadership. Do you guys have anything to end with, Cory?
No, I appreciate
Appreciate you being on
coming
here.
on.
Yeah.
And again, you can find us on Instagram at Levi Wanner. Thanks everybody for coming, and we'll talk to you next time.